3 days after arriving at Nexus 7. Hien Wu had already become the talk of the station, but not in a good way. Word had spread quickly through all the levels about the small, quiet human, who worked in maintenance. Most of the stories made him sound even smaller and weaker than he actually was. The Drakmor warriors seemed to take special pleasure in making his life difficult. Every time Hien Wu tried to move through the main corridors carrying his tools and equipment, he would find his path blocked by one or two of the giant lizard beings. They would stand in his way, pretending not to see him until he was forced to ask them to move, please. "Excuse me, I need to get through," Hien Wu would say politely. The Drakmor would look down at him with their glowing eyes and make comments in their own language before slowly stepping aside. They always made sure to bump into him as he passed, sometimes hard enough to make him stumble. The other beings in the corridor would watch these encounters, but no one ever offered to help. Thex, the largest of the Drakmor warriors, had made it his personal mission to remind everyone how weak humans were. He would tell stories about how easy it would be to break a human in half, or how pathetic their lack of natural weapons made them. His friends would laugh and add their own comments about human weakness. The crystal being Clix felt sorry for Hien Wu and tried to help when possible, but even the Vorthek were afraid of making the Drakmor angry. The few times Clix had tried to defend the human, Thex had threatened to smash the crystal being into pieces, so Clix learned to stay quiet. Other species on the station began to treat Hien Wu as the lowest member of their community. Some would push past him without saying "excuse me." Others would take things from his hands, claiming they needed them more. The bird-like Cathari would steal his food from the common eating areas. The slug-like Mallory would leave slime trails in his path on purpose, but Hien Wu never complained or fought back. He would simply clean up the mess, find another path, or get more food. His calm reaction made the other beings think he was even weaker than they had first believed. Some started to think humans might be the most cowardly species in the galaxy. During his work shifts in the maintenance tunnels, Hien Wu began to notice things that troubled him. The power systems showed signs of wear that seemed unusual for equipment of this age. Some of the connections had been loosened just enough to cause problems, but not enough to trigger automatic safety warnings. At first he thought it might be normal wear from the harsh conditions of space, but as he examined more systems, he found a pattern. Someone had been carefully weakening the station's power grid in small ways that would not be noticed unless someone was looking for them. The main power coupling that fed energy to the station's defensive shields had several connections that were almost ready to fail. When they did fail, the shields would go down for at least 10 minutes while emergency systems kicked in. That was more than enough time for an enemy ship to attack the station. Hien Wu made careful notes about what he found and reported his concerns to Clix during their next meeting. He explained how the damage looked deliberate and showed the crystal being his measurements and calculations. "I think someone is trying to sabotage the station," Hien Wu said quietly. These problems did not happen by accident. Clix studied the data but seemed confused. "Human systems are very different from ours. Maybe you do not understand how alien technology works. These old stations have problems all the time." But Hien Wu was certain about what he had found. The patterns were too precise, too carefully planned to be accidents. Someone with good knowledge of the station systems was preparing for something big over the next few days. He paid closer attention to the people moving through the maintenance areas. Most workers came and went on regular schedules doing their assigned jobs, but he noticed that some of the Drakmor warriors would disappear into restricted areas for hours at a time. These were not the maintenance workers or technicians. These were the warriors who spent most of their time in the trading areas and common rooms making deals and showing off their strength. What would warriors need in the deep maintenance tunnels? Hien Wu began tracking their movements when he could do so without being seen. He learned their schedules and figured out which tunnels they used. The warriors always carried large bags or containers when they went into the restricted areas, but the bags looked empty when they came out. One evening, while working late on a power distribution panel, Hien Wu heard voices coming from a tunnel that was supposed to be unused. He quietly made his way closer and listened. The voices were speaking in the Drakmor language, but he recognized some of the common trade words mixed in. They were talking about schedules and timing, about ships arriving and systems failing. He could not understand everything, but he heard enough to know they were planning something that would happen soon. The harassment from other beings on the station got worse as word spread that the human never fought back beings who would never dare to challenge a Drakmor or even a Vorthok felt safe pushing around the small human. Some started demanding that he give them part of his daily food rations as tribute to stronger species. When Hyun Woo was eating his simple meal in the common area, a group of young Cathari surrounded his table. The bird-like beings had sharp beaks and claws but were much smaller than the Drakmor. They felt safe bullying someone they saw as even weaker than themselves. Human, you eat too much food for such a small creature, one of them said. You should share with your betters. Hyun Woo looked up at them calmly and pushed half of his meal across the table. Take what you want, I do not need much food. The Cathari were surprised by how easily he gave up his food. They had expected him to argue or at least look upset. Instead, he seemed completely unbothered by losing half his dinner. This made them think he was even more pathetic than they had believed. Word of this incident spread quickly through the station. Now everyone knew that the human would give up anything if pressured even slightly. More beings began approaching him demanding small tributes or favors. They took his tools, his food, his work assignments, anything they wanted. But while everyone was focused on how weak and submissive the human appeared, Hyun Woo was learning everything he could about the station and its inhabitants. He memorized the schedules of every worker, the patrol routes of security, the locations of emergency systems, and backup controls. He also continued his investigation of the sabotage. Each day he found more evidence that someone was preparing the station for an attack. The power systems, defensive grids, and communication arrays all showed signs of careful tampering designed to fail at exactly the right moment. The most disturbing discovery came when he found traces of military-grade explosives hidden in unused maintenance shafts. These were not mining explosives or tools for cutting metal. These were weapons designed to destroy large structures and kill many people at once. Hyun Woo realized that the situation was much more serious than simple sabotage. Someone was planning to attack Nexus 7, and they had help from inside the station. The sabotage was meant to disable the defenses at exactly the right moment to let attackers through. He tried again to report his findings to station security, but the communication systems had problems every time he tried to send a message. The problems were always temporary and seemed like normal technical difficulties, but Hyun Woo suspected they were being caused on purpose. The beings who were planning this attack had thought of everything. They had people working inside the station to prepare the way. They had disabled communications to prevent warnings. They had made sure that anyone who might discover their plan would not be believed or taken seriously. As the days passed, the sabotage became more obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. But Hyun Woo was just a small human maintenance worker who everyone thought was too weak and stupid to understand complex systems. Even if he tried to warn people, most would not listen to him. The other maintenance workers were too busy with their own jobs to pay attention to his concerns. The security forces were focused on preventing fights between different species and keeping order in the common areas. Station management was dealing with trade disputes and supply problems. Hyun Woo found himself in a position he had hoped never to face again. He was probably the only person who knew about a coming attack that could kill hundreds of innocent beings, but he was also someone that no one would believe or take seriously. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on him as he went about his daily routine of being pushed around and humiliated by stronger beings. Every time someone took his food or blocked his path or made jokes about human weakness, he had to remind himself that maintaining his cover was more important than his pride. But deep inside, where no one could see, Hyun Woo was preparing for what might come. He studied every corridor, every system, every possible advantage the station might have in a fight. He identified weapon supplies, emergency procedures, and escape routes for civilians. Most importantly, he began to plan how a small, supposedly weak human might be able to make a difference when the time came. The other beings on Nexus 7 saw him as harmless and pathetic, but that perception might become his greatest weapon when everything went wrong. The monthly supply run brought more chaos to Nexus 7 than usual. A transport ship called Deep Trader had arrived carrying new workers and fresh supplies, but also news that made everyone nervous. Pirates had been attacking mining stations in nearby systems, and some had been completely destroyed. The station buzzed with worried conversations as beings discussed what they would do if pirates came to. Nexus 7 most agreed that the station's defenses were strong enough to hold off any attack, but Han Wu knew better. He had seen the sabotage that would cripple those defenses at exactly the wrong moment. While everyone was distracted by the news and the excitement of new arrivals, Han Wu decided it was time to investigate the hidden explosives he had discovered. He waited until the late shift when most beings were sleeping or relaxing in the common areas, moving through the maintenance tunnels. Like a ghost, he made his way to the unused sections where he had found traces of the military-grade explosives. The passages were dark and quiet, with only the distant hum of the station's life support systems for company. What he found was worse than he had feared. Hidden throughout the unused tunnels were enough explosives to damage or destroy every major system on the station. There were charges placed near the main power generators. The defensive shield controls the communication arrays and even the life support systems. Someone had spent months carefully placing these charges in locations where they would do maximum damage. The explosives were connected by nearly invisible wires to a central control system that could trigger all of them at once. This was not just sabotage, it was preparation for complete destruction. As Han Wu studied the setup, he heard voices coming from deeper in the tunnels. He quickly hid behind a large pipe and listened as several beings approached in the darkness. The voices belonged to Drakmor warriors, and they were speaking in the common trade language. The timing must be perfect, Vorgan was saying to his companions. When the deep trader leaves tomorrow, our allies will be waiting in the asteroid field. They will attack exactly 30 minutes after departure. Another voice that Han Wu recognized as belonging to Dex responded, the charges are all in place. When we trigger them, the shields will fail, the communications will go down, and the power grid will be overloaded. Even if some systems survive, it will take hours to restore full defensive capability, a third Drakmor warrior added, and by then our allies will have taken everything valuable and disappeared back into deep space. The survivors will be too busy trying to repair their station to chase us. Han Wu felt his blood grow cold as he realized the full scope of the plan. These were not just pirates looking to steal cargo. They intended to destroy most of the station and kill anyone who tried to stop them. The explosives were placed to make survival impossible for most of the beings living on Nexus 7. He tried to move closer to hear more details, but accidentally brushed against a loose pipe. The small sound echoed in the tunnel, and the Drakmor voices immediately stopped talking. What was that? Bex whispered. Did you hear something? Check the tunnels, Vorgan ordered. Make sure we are alone. Han Wu pressed himself deeper into the shadows as the three warriors began searching the area with small lights. Their huge forms moved through the tunnels with surprising quiet, but they were looking for an intruder and would find him soon. Thinking quickly, Han Wu picked up a small piece of metal debris and threw it deeper into the tunnels away from where he was hiding. The sound of it hitting the wall drew the Drakmor in that direction, giving him a chance to slip away through a different passage. He made his way back to his quarters without being seen, but his mind was racing with what he had learned. The attack would come tomorrow, and hundreds of innocent beings would die unless someone stopped it, but he was still just a maintenance worker that no one would believe that night. Han Wu lay in his bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about his options. He could try to warn station security, but they would probably dismiss him as a confused human who did not understand what he had seen. He could try to disable the explosives himself, but there were too many of them, and he would be caught. The next morning brought news that made his situation even more desperate. The deep trader was preparing to leave ahead of schedule due to reports of pirate activity in the area. This meant the attack would come sooner than expected, and there was even less time to prepare. As he went about his morning routine, Han Wu noticed that some of the Drakmor warriors were acting strangely. They seemed nervous and kept checking the time. They also avoided the areas where the explosives were hidden, as if they knew what was coming during his work shift. He tried once more to contact station security through the communication system, but again there were mysterious technical problems that prevented his messages from going through. He realized that the conspirators had people working in the communications center as well. The deep trader departed from Nexus 7 exactly on schedule, carrying away the last chance for outside help. Han Wu watched from a maintenance viewport as the ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the station alone and vulnerable. In the asteroid field, he had 30 minutes before the attack began, 30 minutes to do something that might save hundreds of lives. But what could one small human do against a carefully planned assault backed by traitors inside the station? As he thought about his impossible situation, Haiyan remembered something his old instructor had told him many years ago. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy does not expect. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. That evening, as the station settled into its normal routine, Haiyan made his way through the common areas one last time as the harmless maintenance worker everyone thought they knew. Vex and two other Drakmor warriors were sitting at a table near the main corridor, talking quietly among themselves. When they saw the small human approaching with his tool bag, Vex smiled cruelly and stood up, blocking his path. The other two warriors also stood, creating a wall of muscle and scales that completely blocked the corridor. Well, the tiny human, Vex said in a mocking voice. You look different tonight, almost like you know something you should not know. Haiyan stopped and looked up at the three massive warriors who towered over him like buildings. Their eyes glowed with anticipation, as if they were looking forward to what came next. Other beings in the area noticed the confrontation, but quickly looked away, not wanting to get involved. Just want to get back to my quarters, Haiyan said in the same quiet, polite voice he always used. I have work to do. Tomorrothex laughed, and the sound was like rocks grinding together. I do not think you will be doing any work tomorrow, little human. In fact, I do not think you will be doing anything at all. The big Drakmor reached out with one clawed hand as if to grab Haiyan by the throat. The human took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The other two warriors had moved to block any escape route. This is where your miserable existence ends, Human Next said, raising his hand to strike. You should have stayed on your own pathetic world. But as the massive clawed hand descended toward him, something changed in Haiyan eyes. The quiet, submissive maintenance worker disappeared and was replaced by someone completely different, someone who had been hiding behind a mask of weakness and fear. Moving faster than the Drakmor thought possible, Haiyan stepped inside Vex's reach and struck the warrior at 3 precise points on his neck and torso. The giant lizard being made a choking sound and collapsed to the floor unconscious before he could even cry out. The second warrior lunged forward, but Haiyan was already moving. He used the being's own momentum against him, guiding the attack past his body while striking at nerve clusters that would shut down motor control. The second Drakmor crashed into a wall and slid to the floor, paralyzed but still conscious. The third warrior had time to draw a weapon, but not to use it. Haiyan flowed around the energy blade like water around a rock. His hands found pressure points that no Drakmor had ever taught their warriors to protect. The weapon clattered to the floor as its owner joined his unconscious companions. The entire fight had taken less than 10 seconds and had been conducted in almost complete silence. The few beings who had been watching were too shocked to react. They could not understand what they had just seen. How had the weakest being on the station just defeated 3 of the strongest? Haiyan quickly dragged the unconscious Drakmor into a nearby maintenance closet and sealed the door. He checked to make sure no one else had seen what happened, then calmly picked up his tool bag and continued on his way as if nothing had occurred. But word of the impossible incident spread through the station like wildfire. Beings who had been there told others, who told still others. Within hours, everyone had heard some version of the story. Most refused to believe it. Some thought it was a joke or a misunderstanding. The 3 Drakmor warriors woke up hours later in the maintenance closet with no memory of how they got there. They remembered confronting the human, but everything after that was blank. They decided not to report the incident since it would make them look weak and foolish, but Haiyan knew that his cover was blown. Anyone smart enough to investigate would realize that the harmless maintenance worker was not what he appeared to be. He had maybe hours before someone figured out who he really was. The attack was coming, and now he had no choice but to act. The time for hiding was over. The small human who had been dismissed, the giant metal ship called Void Stalker, moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Its huge body was bigger than 10 city blocks put together and filled with hundreds of different alien beings, all traveling to the same place. The ship groaned and creaked as it flew, making sounds that reminded everyone inside that they were very far from home. In the main passenger area sat dozens of creatures that looked nothing like each other. Some were tall and covered in shiny scales that looked like armor. Others had crystal bodies that sparkled when light hit them. A few had too many arms or legs or eyes that glowed different colors. The air smelled like a mix of different worlds and different kinds of life. Among all these strange and powerful-looking aliens sat one small human named Hyun-woo. He looked very ordinary compared to everyone else around him. His black hair was cut short and neat. His clothes were simple work clothes that had seen better days. He carried only a small bag with his few belongings and sat quietly in his seat, reading something on a small device. The other passengers kept looking at him and whispering to each other in their own languages. Some pointed at him when they thought he was not looking. Others made sounds that were clearly laughing. The biggest and loudest group were the Drakmor warriors, who took up almost a whole section of the passenger area by themselves. The Drakmor looked like giant lizards that had learned to walk on two legs and wear clothes. They were covered in thick scales that ranged from dark green to pure black. Their eyes glowed yellow or orange, and their mouths were full of sharp teeth that they showed when they smiled. The smallest Drakmor was still twice as tall as Hyun-woo and 3 times as wide. One of the Drakmor warriors named Vex kept staring at the human and making jokes in the Drakmor language. His friends would laugh every time he said something, and then they would all look at Hyun-woo. Again, Vex was one of the bigger Drakmor with scales so dark they looked almost purple. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. Another passenger sitting near Hyun-woo was a crystal being called a Vorthak. These creatures looked like they were made of living glass that changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, this one was showing nervous blue and green swirls as it watched the Drakmor making fun of the human. The Vorthak had a kind heart and felt bad for the small human who was being picked on. The crystal being leaned over to Hyun-woo and spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. These beings had learned to speak the common trade language that most species used when they traveled together. I am sorry. They are being rude, the Vorthak said. My name is Klix. I work in maintenance on the station where we are going. Hyun-woo looked up from his device and smiled at the crystal being. Thank you for being kind. My name is Hyun-woo. I will also be working in maintenance. It seems Klix was surprised. A human in maintenance work. Most humans I have heard about do important jobs like trading or research or commanding ships. Why would you choose to fix broken things? Hyun-woo shrugged his shoulders. I like fixing things. It makes me feel useful when something broken works again. Their conversation was interrupted when the ship suddenly shook and the lights dimmed for a moment. A voice came over the ship speakers announcing that they were getting close to their destination. The voice belonged to the ship captain, who was from a species that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. Attention, all passengers, we are now approaching Nexus 7 station. Please prepare for docking procedures. All passengers must remain in their seats until we have completed the docking process. Welcome to the frontier. Through the small windows, passengers could see their destination. Growing larger, Nexus 7 was built inside a huge asteroid that had been hollowed out and turned into a space station. Lights sparkled across its surface like stars, and ships moved in and out of its docking bays like busy insects around a hive. The station was known throughout this part of the galaxy as a rough place where only the strong survived. It was a mining station that pulled valuable metals and crystals from the asteroid belt around a distant star. The work was dangerous, and the people who lived there were often running from something or looking for a fresh start. The Void Stalker slowly moved into one of the larger docking bays. The passengers began gathering their belongings and preparing to leave the ship. The Drakmor warriors stood up first, making sure everyone could see how big and strong they were. They checked their weapons and armor pieces, making loud noises to show they were ready for anything. Vex walked past Hyun-woo's seat and bumped into him on purpose, making the human drop his small bag. The contents spilled out onto the floor, showing only basic tools and a few personal items, nothing valuable or dangerous. Vex laughed and said something in the Drakmor language that made his friends laugh. To watch where you put your tiny human things, Vex said in broken common language. Next time I might step on them. Hyun-woo quietly picked up his belongings without saying anything back. He noticed that Vex wore expensive-looking armor and carried weapons that cost more than most people. Made in a year, the Drakmor was clearly someone important in his society, probably a warrior or merchant with lots of money and power. When The ship finally docked and the doors opened. The passengers began filing out into the station. Han Wu waited until most of the others had left before getting up. He preferred to avoid crowds and conflicts when possible. The station beyond the docking bay was busy and loud with beings of all kinds, moving around conducting business. The first thing that hit everyone was the smell. The station recycled its air, but it still carried the sense of different species, different foods, and the metallic smell of mining equipment. The walls were made of the same dark rock as the asteroid, with metal supports and pipes running everywhere. The lighting was harsh and practical, not meant to be beautiful. Signs in different languages pointed toward various parts of the station: housing areas, work zones, shopping districts, and restricted areas. The common areas were filled with tables and chairs where beings could eat and socialize, but the furniture was built to accommodate many different body types and sizes. As Han Wu walked through the station carrying his bag, he noticed how the different species grouped together. The Drakmor controlled the best areas near the main trading posts. The Crystal Vorthek had claimed spaces near the power generators where they could absorb energy. The other species filled in the remaining areas based on their own needs and how much respect or fear they commanded. The human noticed something else too. The way beings looked at each other and moved around each other told a story about who was important and who was not. The strong took what they wanted, the weak gave way and tried not to attract attention. It was like a giant game where everyone knew the rules except him. Han Wu found the maintenance office in the lower levels of the station. The areas down here were darker and quieter, with fewer people around. The walls showed more of the natural asteroid rock, and the air was cooler. Most beings avoided the lower levels unless they worked there. The maintenance supervisor was Clix, the same Vorthek who had been kind to him on the ship. The crystal being was surprised to see him again, but happy to have a friendly face in the new job. I did not expect to see you again so soon, Clix said. The maintenance department is not where most beings want to work. It is hard, dirty work in uncomfortable places. That sounds perfect to me, Han Wu replied. I work better when people leave me alone to do my job. As Clix showed him around the maintenance areas, Han Wu paid close attention to everything: the layout of the tunnels and passages, the location of important systems and controls, the way different areas connected to each other. His eyes took in details that most people would miss or ignore. The maintenance tunnels ran throughout the entire station like blood vessels in a body. They connected every major system and provided access to areas that regular passengers and workers never saw. From these tunnels, a person could reach almost anywhere on the station without being seen. This will be your work area, Clix explained, pointing to a section of tunnels near the main power systems. You will be responsible for checking the systems and fixing anything that breaks. Most of the work is routine, but sometimes there are emergencies. Han Wu nodded and began examining the control panels and diagnostic equipment. Everything looked standard for this type of station, though some of the equipment was older than he expected. The previous maintenance workers had done decent work, but he could already see small problems that would need attention. As his first day ended, Han Wu made his way to the housing area that had been assigned to him. The room was small and basic, but clean and private. He sat on the simple bed and thought about what he had observed during his first day on Nexus 7. The station operated on a clear hierarchy based on strength and fear. The Drakmor warriors were at the top, followed by other strong species, then the skilled workers and traders at the bottom were beings like him who were seen as weak or unimportant, but Han Wu had learned long ago that being underestimated could be an advantage. People who thought you were harmless often revealed more than they intended. They made mistakes because they were not worried about you watching them. As he prepared for sleep in his new home, Han Wu allowed himself a small smile. He had work to do and a new life to build, and if the other beings on Nexus 7 wanted to think he was just another weak human who fixed broken pipes, that was perfectly fine with him. Sometimes the best. The attack began exactly as the conspirators had planned, with alarms blaring throughout Nexus 7 as the station's sensors detected a fleet of unknown ships dropping out of hyperspace. The defensive systems tried to respond but immediately began failing as the hidden sabotage took effect. In the command center, station officers watched helplessly as their screens showed critical system failures cascading through the entire defensive grid. The shields flickered and died. The main weapons platforms went offline and emergency power systems struggled to maintain basic life support outside, the Station 12 heavily armed raider ships moved into attack formation. Their sleek black hulls were covered in weapons that could tear through normal station armor like paper. These were not desperate pirates looking for easy cargo. These were professional military vessels equipped for total destruction on. The main command deck Captain Yorn, a Cathari officer, tried desperately to coordinate a defense with systems that refused to work properly. His crew worked frantically at their stations, but every attempt to restore weapons or shields met with new failures. The power grid is completely destabilized, he shouted to his communications officer. Send a distress signal to any ships in the area. Communications are down, sir, came the reply. Our transmitters are not responding, and the relay stations show multiple malfunctions throughout. The station beings ran in panic as the lights flickered, and life support systems began making alarming sounds. The civilian areas filled with frightened families clutching their belongings, while security forces tried to maintain order without proper equipment. But in the deep maintenance tunnels, Heian, Wu, and Razak were ready for what was coming. They had spent the previous night preparing backup systems and alternative power routes using the humans' knowledge of the station's infrastructure and the Drakmor warriors' understanding of defensive strategy. The primary systems are failing as expected, Hyun Woo said, checking a portable diagnostic device, but the backup power grid I installed is holding emergency lighting, and life support will continue working in the civilian area. Rozak wore his full battle armor and carried weapons that had served him in dozens of conflicts. He looked at the small human who still wore simple maintenance coveralls and asked, "Are you ready for battle? Do you need weapons or armor?" Hyun Woo shook his head and opened his tool bag, revealing that it contained much more than simple repair equipment. Hidden among the normal tools were compact weapons and devices that looked far more advanced than anything normally seen on the station. "I am ready," he said quietly. "Let's begin." The first wave of raiders blasted through the station's outer hull using shaped charges that created precise breaches in the armor. They poured through the openings, expecting to find panicked defenders and disabled systems. Instead, they found that their intelligence was wrong. The corridors they had planned to use were sealed by emergency barriers that should not have been working. The power systems they expected to be down were running on mysterious backup sources. The communication jammers they had brought were being countered by signals coming from locations that were not supposed to exist in the main docking bay. A squad of raiders in heavy combat armor advanced confidently toward the central hub, expecting easy resistance from station security. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared trap. Hyun Wu appeared behind them like a ghost, moving through maintenance shafts that connected to areas the raiders had not secured. His movements were fluid and precise as he disabled their advanced armor with tools that seemed ordinary but struck at exactly the right points to shut down power systems. The raiders spun around trying to locate their attacker, but found only empty corridors and flickering shadows. Their communication equipment filled with static, and their armor systems began failing one by one, leaving them vulnerable to the station security forces that emerged from hidden positions. Meanwhile, Razak led a group of loyal Drakmor warriors against the traitors who had helped plan the attack. Thex and his conspirators tried to activate the explosives they had planted, but discovered that the detonation sequences had been changed during the night. "You betrayed your own people," Razak roared as he confronted Thex in the main corridor. "For money, you would have killed hundreds of innocent beings." Thex snarled back, drawing his energy weapons. "The old ways are dead, Razak. This station belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it to battle." Between the two groups of Drakmor was fierce and loud, echoing through the corridors as massive warriors clashed with weapons that could cut through metal. The loyal warriors fought with the fury of beings defending their home, while the traitors fought with the desperation of those who knew they faced execution if captured. Throughout the station, Hyun Woo moved like a phantom, appearing wherever the raiders expected easy victory and turning their advantages into weaknesses. He used his knowledge of every tunnel and passage to strike at their supply lines, disable their equipment, and rescue trapped civilians. In one section, he found a group of Vorthak families huddled in a dead-end corridor while raiders prepared to break through their barricade. Moving through ventilation shafts, he appeared behind the attackers and used non-lethal techniques to disable them before they could harm the crystal beings in another area. He discovered raiders trying to access the station's computer systems to steal valuable mining data before they could complete their downloads. He introduced a virus that not only destroyed their attempts, but also transmitted their ship locations to any remaining defensive systems. The raiders had expected their attack to be over within minutes, with the station's defenses crippled and resistance minimal. Instead, they found themselves fighting a defensive force that seemed to know their every move and counter every strategy. Their advanced weapons were neutralized by a maintenance worker who somehow knew exactly how to disable them. Their surprise attacks failed because someone had warned the defenders. Their escape routes were blocked by barriers that appeared in impossible locations. Captain Grick's commander of the raider fleet watched from his flagship as his carefully planned assault fell apart. His ship's sensors showed that the station still had active defenses, despite the sabotage, and his ground forces were reporting impossible resistance. How is this happening? He demanded of his communications officer. Our inside sources confirmed that all defensive systems would be disabled, sir. The officer replied, our people on the station are not responding. Their last message mentioned unexpected problems with the explosives and some kind of interference on Nexus 7. The tide of battle was turning against the raiders. Their superior numbers and equipment meant nothing when they could not use them effectively. The station defenders, led by an unlikely alliance between a Drakmor Alpha and a human maintenance worker, were systematically destroying the invasion force. Hien Wu appeared in the command center where Captain Yorn was still trying to coordinate defenses with failing equipment. The human quickly connected his own devices to the station's systems and began restoring functionality to critical controls. The main weapons platform is back online, he announced as targeting systems came to life. Try the forward plasma cannons now. Captain Yorn fired the restored weapons and watched with satisfaction as they struck one of the raider ships, causing significant damage. For the first time since the attack began, the station was fighting back effectively. More systems came online as Hien Wu bypassed the sabotaged connections and rerouted power through his hidden backup networks. Within minutes, the station's defensive capabilities were stronger than they had been before the attack. The remaining raiders found themselves facing a fully operational defensive system backed by defenders who knew every advantage the station could provide. Their ships began taking heavy damage from weapons that should have been destroyed. Their boarding parties were trapped in corridors that had become kill zones. Captain Grix realized that his mission had failed completely. Not only had they failed to capture the valuable mining equipment, but they had lost most of their assault force and several ships. His only option was to retreat before the station's restored communications could call for help from nearby systems. All ships withdraw immediately, he ordered. Repeat, all ships withdraw. We are aborting the mission. But as the surviving raider ships tried to escape, they discovered that their departure was not going to be as easy as their arrival. The station sensors were tracking them perfectly now, and the restored weapons platforms were targeting their engines and navigation systems. Several raiders exploded as they tried to jump to hyperspace, their damaged systems unable to handle the stress of faster-than-light travel. Others limped away with critical damage that would make them easy targets for any patrol ships they encountered. The battle for Nexus 7 was over, and the defenders had won a victory that should have been impossible. The small human who everyone had dismissed as weak had turned a certain massacre into a triumph that would be remembered throughout the sector as the emergency lights finally gave way to normal illumination and the life support systems returned to full operation. The beings of Nexus 7 began to understand that their quiet maintenance worker was someone very different from what they had believed. Alpha Razak, ruler of the Drakmor warriors on Nexus 7, had lived for over 200 years and survived countless battles. He had learned to trust his instincts when something seemed wrong, and right now every instinct he had was screaming that the incident with his warriors was not what it appeared to. Beatty official report claimed that Vex, Vorgan, and Drak had been found unconscious in a maintenance closet with no memory of how they got there. Security footage from the area showed technical problems at exactly the right time to miss whatever had happened. Medical scans showed they had been struck at precise nerve points that caused temporary paralysis and memory loss. No, being on Nexus 7 should have known enough about Drakmor anatomy. To make such precise strikes, the technique was surgical professional, unlike anything seen in typical station fights. It spoke of extensive training and detailed knowledge of alien physiology. Razak stood in his private chambers looking out at the asteroid field that surrounded the station. His massive frame was covered in ceremonial armor that marked his rank and status. The scars on his arms and chest told the story of a warrior who had earned his position through combat and cunning. 3 of my best warriors defeated by someone skilled enough to avoid security cameras and smart enough to leave no evidence, Razak said to himself. This was not a lucky accident. This was the work of someone with military training. He activated his personal computer and began searching through galactic databases for information about human military forces. What he found made him more concerned than he had expected. Human soldiers were known throughout the galaxy as being among the most dangerous fighters. When properly trained, unlike most species, humans did not rely on natural weapons or overwhelming physical strength. Instead, they used intelligence, adaptability, and extensive training to overcome larger, stronger opponents. Their special forces were legendary for being able to operate behind enemy lines and achieve impossible objectives. Earth military records were classified, but Razak had contacts who could access information that others could not. A few hours of careful research revealed disturbing facts about human warfare capabilities. They had developed fighting techniques that could disable beings much larger than themselves. They specialized in stealth sabotage and psychological warfare. The timing of a trained human arriving on Nexus 7 just before reports of increased pirate activity could not be a coincidence. Someone had sent this human here for a specific purpose. The question was whether he was working with the pirates or against them. Razak decided to observe the human maintenance worker personally. He began making regular tours of the lower levels, claiming to inspect security procedures but really watching how the small human moved and acted. What he saw convinced him that his suspicions were correct. The human moved through the maintenance tunnels with the confidence of someone who knew every passage and system on the station. His eyes constantly scanned for threats and opportunities. Like a soldier in enemy territory during one of these observation sessions, Razak noticed the human doing something that seemed unusual. He was making small adjustments to various systems, not the normal maintenance work, but careful modifications that would not be noticed unless someone knew what to look for. Following the human from a distance, Razak watched as he systematically visited different parts of the station, always staying in areas where security cameras had technical problems or blind spots. The modifications he made seemed random at first, but gradually a pattern emerged. The human was preparing the station systems for some kind of emergency. He was creating backup power routes, alternative communication pathways, and redundant safety systems. Someone was expecting the normal systems to fail and was making sure there would be alternatives ready. This confirmed Razak's suspicion that an attack was coming and that the human knew about it. The question remained whether he was part of the attack or trying to prevent it. His actions suggested he was working to protect the station, not destroy it. Razak began his own investigation into possible threats to Nexus 7. He quietly questioned his warriors about their recent activities and noticed that some of them had been behaving strangely. Several had been spending time in restricted areas and having private meetings with beings from other species. The Alpha Drakmor had not survived this long without learning to recognize the signs of conspiracy and betrayal. Some of his own warriors were involved in whatever was being planned. This meant the threat was coming from inside the station as well as outside. Over the next 2 days, Razak watched both the suspicious human and his own potentially traitorous. The human continued his systematic preparations, working with quiet efficiency to strengthen the station's defenses. The Drakmor conspirators became more nervous and secretive as some deadline approached. On the 3rd day, Razak decided to confront the human directly. He waited in one of the lower maintenance tunnels until the small being appeared carrying his usual bag of tools. When their eyes met, both warriors recognized something in the other that confirmed their suspicions. You are not what you appear to be, human, Razak said, stepping out of the shadows. His massive form filled the narrow tunnel, but he kept his hands away from his weapons. Neither Are some of your warriors? Hyunwoo replied calmly. He did not seem surprised or frightened by the confrontation rack. Studied the human's posture and expression. Everything about him suggested military training and combat experience. This was not a frightened maintenance worker. This was a soldier who had chosen to hide his true nature. What is your real purpose here? Razak asked who sent you and why. Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment, considering how much he should reveal. Finally, he seemed to make a decision. I came here to work in maintenance and live quietly. But I have discovered that this station is going to be attacked soon. Your own warriors are helping to prepare for it. The Drakmor Alpha felt his suspicions confirmed, but also felt a surge of anger at the betrayal by his own people. Which of my warriors? He asked several of them, including Vex and Vorgan. Hyunwoo replied, they have placed explosives throughout the station and sabotaged the defensive systems. When the attack comes, the shields will fail and the power grid will be destroyed. Razak realized that the human had been trying to protect the station all along. His preparations were not for an attack but for defense against one. The small being who everyone dismissed as weak and harmless was actually trying to save their lives. What? Are you really human? Razak asked. What training do you have that allowed you to defeat 3 of my warriors without weapons? I used to be a soldier, Hyunwoo admitted, many years ago before I came here. I served in Earth Special Forces. I retired from that life and wanted only to work with my hands and live in peace. Special Forces, Razak repeated. He had heard stories about those units. They were said to be among the most elite warriors in the galaxy, trained to operate alone behind enemy lines and accomplish missions that seemed impossible. Why did you not reveal yourself earlier? Razak asked. Why let everyone believe you are weak? Because being underestimated is an advantage, Hyunwoo explained. When people think you are harmless, they ignore you. They make mistakes because they do not see you as a threat. It also means that peaceful work is easier when no one expects you to solve their problems with violence. Razak understood the wisdom in this approach. A true warrior knew when to reveal strength and when to hide it. The human had chosen to remain hidden until the situation became desperate enough to require action. The attack will come soon, Hyunwoo continued. The explosives are already in place and the sabotage is nearly complete. We have very little time to prepare defenses or evacuate civilians. Show me these explosives, Razak ordered. I must see the evidence for myself. For the next hour, Hyunwoo led the Drakmor Alpha through the hidden passages where the charges had been placed. Razak examined the setup with growing horror, realizing that the explosion would kill most of the beings on the station and destroy critical life support systems. This is the work of professionals, he said. These charges are placed to cause maximum casualties and damage whoever planned this wants to make sure there are no survivors to identify them. We can disable some of the charges, Hyunwoo said, but there are too many of them and we do not have enough time. The only way to save the station is to be ready when the attack comes. Razak looked at the small human with new respect. This being had discovered a deadly conspiracy, tried to report it through proper channels, and when that failed, had taken it upon himself to prepare defenses. He had risked his own safety to protect beings who had treated him badly. You are a true warrior, the Drakmor Alpha said, removing one of his ceremonial arm guards and offering it to Hyunwoo. This is a mark of respect from one soldier to another. Hyunwoo accepted the gift with a slight bow. I hope we can work together to save the innocent beings on this station. As they made their way back through the tunnels, Razak felt a strange mixture of respect and sadness. The small human had shown more honor and courage than his own warriors who had betrayed their people for profit. The galaxy was a strange place where strength could hide behind weakness and enemies could be found. Among friends, tomorrow would bring the test that would reveal who was truly strong and who was merely pretending. The Alpha Drakmor found himself looking forward to fighting alongside the quiet human who had fooled everyone into thinking he was harmless. The silence that followed the battle was almost as shocking as the attack itself. Nexus 7 had survived what should have been total destruction, and the beings who lived there were slowly beginning to understand how close they had come to dying. The emergency sirens had stopped wailing and normal lighting was returning to most areas of the station. In the main assembly hall, Alpha Razak stood before a crowd that included every species and faction on the station: Drakmor warriors, Vorthek crystal beings, Cathari bird people, and dozens of other alien races, all gathered together in a way that had never happened before. The recent battle had changed everything about how they saw each other and their home standing quietly at the back of the crowd was Hyun-woo, still wearing his simple maintenance coveralls, now torn and stained from the battle. His tool bag sat at his feet, containing the same mix of ordinary repair equipment and advanced military devices that had helped save the station. Most of the beings in the crowd kept looking back at him with expressions ranging from amazement to embarrassment. Many of them remembered how they had treated the small human over the past weeks, pushing him around, stealing his food, and making jokes about human weakness. Razak raised one massive clawed hand, and the crowd fell silent. The Drakmor Alpha had removed his battle armor and wore only the ceremonial robes that marked his position as leader of his people. The scars on his arms and chest were clearly visible reminders of the many battles he had fought and survived. Citizens of Nexus 7, he began, his deep voice carrying easily through the large space. We have survived an attack that was designed to kill us all. The raiders who came here expected to find a weak station with broken defenses and frightened beings hiding in their quarters. A murmur ran through the crowd as beings remembered the terror they had felt when the alarms first sounded. Many had been convinced they were going to die and had said goodbye to their families in those first chaotic moments. Instead, Razak continued, they found a station that was ready for them. They found defenders who knew their plans and had prepared countermeasures. They found that their sabotage had been discovered and their inside help had been neutralized. The Drakmor Alpha paused and looked directly at Hyun-woo before continuing. This victory was not achieved by superior weapons or overwhelming force. It was achieved by the intelligence, courage, and skill of one being who chose to protect people who had treated him badly. In the assembly hall, turned to look at the small human who stood quietly at the back of the crowd. Some beings gasped as they realized for the first time that the maintenance worker they had ignored and bullied was responsible for saving their lives. Hyun-woo of Earth, Razak said formally, I call you forward. The crowd parted as the human walked slowly toward the front of the hall. His footsteps echoed in the silence as hundreds of beings watched his approach. Many of them were remembering specific incidents when they had been cruel to him and feeling ashamed of their behavior. When Hyun-woo reached the front of the assembly, Razak did something that shocked everyone present. The massive Drakmor Alpha removed his ceremonial battle claws, the most precious possessions of any warrior, and placed them carefully on the floor at the human's feet. By the ancient laws of my people, he announced, any being who saves the lives of Drakmor warriors in battle becomes kin of the pack. This is the highest honor we can give to someone not born to our species. The crowd erupted in surprised voices as beings realized what they were witnessing. No alien had ever been granted this honor before, and it meant that Hyun-woo would be treated as family by every Drakmor in the galaxy. But Razak was not finished speaking. He gestured for silence and continued, for too long we have believed that strength comes only from size and natural weapons. We have judged others by how dangerous they look and how loudly they speak. Today we learned that true strength comes from wisdom, preparation, and the willingness to act when others cannot. The Drakmor Alpha looked around the assembly, making eye contact with beings from every species represented. You all saw this human over the past weeks. You saw someone small and quiet who never fought back when mistreated. What you did not see was someone who was studying, learning, and preparing to protect. Hyun-woo finally spoke, his voice calm and clear as it carried through the silent hall. I did not come here to be a hero. I came here to work with my hands and live quietly. But when I discovered that innocent people were in danger, I could not stand by and do nothing. A Vorthic crystal being named Click stepped forward from the crowd. The maintenance supervisor looked embarrassed as he addressed Hyun-woo. I owe you an apology. When you tried to warn me about the sabotage, I dismissed your concerns because I thought humans could not understand our technology. Other beings began stepping forward to offer their own apologies. The Cathari who had stolen his food, the Mallory who had left slime trails in his path, the various workers who had treated him as the lowest member of their community. All of them now understood that they had been cruel to someone who was trying to help them. I accept your apologies, Hyun-woo said simply, but his next words surprised everyone. But I also want you to understand something important. I am not special because I am human. I am what I am because of choices I made and training I received. Any of you could learn to do what "I do, if you were willing to make the commitment." This statement created another stir in the crowd, as beings realized that the human was not claiming to be superior to them but was offering to share his knowledge and skills. Razak nodded approvingly and addressed the crowd again. "From this day forward, things will be different on Nexus 7. We will not judge beings by their appearance or their species. We will judge them by their actions, and their character. Strength comes in many forms, and wisdom is more valuable than weapons." Over the following days, the social structure of Nexus 7 underwent a complete transformation. The rigid hierarchy based on physical strength and intimidation was replaced by a more complex system that valued intelligence, skill, and moral character. Hien Wu returned to his maintenance duties, but now other beings sought him out for advice and training. He taught basic self-defense techniques to smaller species, showed Vorthok engineers how to better secure their systems, and helped security forces develop better emergency procedures. The Drakmor warriors who had once mocked him now treated him as an honored elder despite his much younger age. Vex and the other conspirators had been exiled from the station, but the loyal warriors remained and learned from their mistakes. Razak often visited Hien Wu in the maintenance tunnels, where they would discuss strategy, philosophy, and the nature of true strength. The massive warrior and the small human had formed an unlikely friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. One evening, as they worked together on repairs to systems damaged during the battle, Razak asked a question that had been troubling him. "Why did you give up your military career to become a maintenance worker? Why choose peace when you were so skilled at war?" Hien Wu was quiet for a long moment as he adjusted a power coupling. Finally, he answered, "Because war should always be the last choice, not the first. I wanted to build things instead of destroying them, to help instead of hurting. But when destruction comes looking for innocent people, someone has to be ready to stop it." The Drakmor Alpha understood this wisdom and respected the human even more for his choice to seek peace, while remaining prepared for war. It was a balance that few warriors ever achieved. Months later, when new beings arrived at Nexus 7, they found a station unlike any other in the galaxy. Different species worked together as equals, sharing knowledge and resources without the constant conflict that plagued most frontier settlements. The new arrivals would often ask about the unusual social harmony they observed and would be told the story of the small human maintenance worker who had taught an entire station that true strength comes from character, not appearance. Some visitors would look around the common areas and notice a quiet being in work clothes who moved with unusual grace and seemed to command respect from everyone regardless of their species. They would point and ask who he was. The answer was always the same: that is Hien Wu, our maintenance chief. He keeps the station running and keeps us all safe. And if the visitors looked closely, they might notice that this ordinary-looking human wore a set of ceremonial Drakmor battle claws, the mark of a warrior honored by one of the galaxy's most fearsome species. But they would also see that he used those honored hands to repair broken equipment, help struggling families, and teach others how to protect themselves. Nexus 7 had learned that heroes do not always look like heroes, and that the greatest strength often hides behind the gentlest appearance. The small human who had once been everyone's favorite target for bullying had become the heart of a community that proved different species could live and work together in peace. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of predators and warriors, but it was also a place where wisdom could triumph over violence, where preparation could defeat surprise, and where one small being with courage and skill could change everything for the better. In the end, the beings of Nexus 7 learned the most important lesson of all: that judging others by their appearance was not just wrong, it was dangerous. They had almost missed the presence of their greatest protector because they could not see past his humble exterior. Now they knew better, and they made sure that every new arrival learned the same lesson.